Let's turn our attention to Gaza, as Hamas has said it won't lay down its weapons until a sovereign Palestinian state is established. The group issued a statement after the US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, told families of hostages being held in Gaza that the organisation had indicated it would disarm. This all comes after negotiations between Israel and Hamas stalled last week, and the UK government said it would recognise a Palestinian state at a UN summit in September unless Israel committed to a ceasefire in Gaza. However, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the government would refrain from recognition if Israel allowed more aid into Gaza, stopped annexing land in the West Bank, and signed up to a long-term peace process over the next 2 months. But now, a group of 49 lawyers have written to the Attorney-General saying that recognising a Palestinian state would be a breach of international law. Well, Jonathan Turner is the Chief Executive of UK Lawyers for Israel. Jonathan, good morning to you. Just tell us where you believe the law stands in this then.
Well, I agree with the law lords and other people, the leading lawyers who've written to the government on this. The well-established qualifications for the existence of a state are a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and a capacity to enter into relations with other states. Really, those criteria are not satisfied in relation to a potential state of Palestine at the present time. There's no single Palestinian government. To the extent there remains a Palestinian government in the Gaza Strip, it is Hamas, not the Palestinian Authority, which administers about 40% of the West Bank under the Oslo Accords. And there's no defined territory. Under the Oslo II Accord, borders and Jerusalem are permanent status issues to be resolved by negotiation. The Palestinian Authority has no control over the Gaza Strip or over Jerusalem or over the majority of the West Bank. It merely administers part of the West Bank under the Oslo II Accord. Capacity to enter into relations with other states. Hamas is a terrorist organisation designated as such in many countries. It doesn't have capacity to enter into relations with other states. And Article 9 of the Oslo II Accord specifies that the Palestinian Authority does not have powers in the sphere of foreign relations, except that the Palestine Liberation Organization may enter into economic, aid, cultural, scientific and educational agreements for the benefit of the Palestinian Authority.
But this letter that's been written to the Attorney-General, though, I mean, it makes reference to a 1933 treaty, the Montevideo Convention. Now, that's 92 years old. It was signed before the existence of the State of Israel. I mean, haven't events like the founding of the State of Israel and other treaties and peace agreements like the Oslo Accord, haven't they all superseded that convention of 1933?
Well, the convention was originally, and is, an agreement between states in the Americas, but the criteria that it expressed have since been widely accepted as representing international law and have become customary international law. And I think that is widely accepted in the international law field. And so those remain the criteria. I noted that Lord Sumption, who is generally rather hostile to Israel, said on a BBC, I think it was a BBC programme, maybe in some other television, that he agreed that the Montevideo criteria were the relevant criteria. He just considered that they were in fact satisfied. But I think the members of the House of Lords who wrote to Lord Hermer took a different view, and I think that view is correct.
Is it possible, though, that you're missing the points, all the lawyers that are arguing for this, that you're getting kind of bogged down in legal technicalities, whereas what the UK Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, has been saying, this is actually just one of the levers it has to deliver peace, that you put pressure on Israel by talking about, recognising the state of Palestine, and that actually in their view, might actually lead to change. And part of what they want to see is a peace process, and part of that would require a two-state solution. So it's about getting Israel to recognise that.
Well, there are 2 points to be made here. First of all, if you start playing fast and loose with international law, it may come back and bite you. And this is actually of some relevance to your Scottish viewers. I think the relaxing the conditions for the existence of states could be of considerable interest to Scottish nationalists and of somewhat concern potentially to the Westminster Parliament. But that's one problem with if you start playing around with these principles, they do affect other cases. The other point is that taking the viewpoint that this was an essentially political aimed statement, it is actually aimed in completely the wrong direction, and it's completely counterproductive because it has said it's very ambiguous and self-conflicting and so on, but it gives the impression to Hamas that if they can avoid entering into a ceasefire agreement, Israel will be blamed, and that will be a reason to give Hamas this major prize of the recognition by the United Kingdom of a Palestinian state. And Hamas,
yeah, but the UK government would not want. But the UK government would not want Hamas running that Palestinian state.
That may be, but they may find that that's what happens in practice. But in any case, Hamas will be able to say it's because of our violent activity, our threat to carry out operations like the 7th of October again and again and again, that has resulted in this massive achievement for Palestine. And from their point of view, 50,000 figure, of course, is disputed, but whatever the number of martyrs there are in paradise, as they would see it, that's not an objectionable price to pay for this massive achievement that they will get if they continue to refuse to accept a ceasefire, and therefore that condition that the British government laid down for not recognising a Palestinian state will not be satisfied, and they'll go ahead and recognise Hamas are refusing to enter into a ceasefire. So it's completely giving the incentive in the wrong direction.
And just to be clear, this is different from a two-state solution, is it? You know, that a two-state solution, which would be something agreed with Israel, that is something different from a country just saying it recognises the state of Palestine. Is that right?
Well, if you recognise a state of Palestine and you've already recognised the state of Israel, you've recognised two states. Mm-hmm. But the Oslo Accords envisaged that there would be a process of agreement, and there has to be an agreement to achieve a stable situation because the borders haven't been resolved, what you do about Jerusalem's not being resolved. And may I say, in relation to Jerusalem, an overwhelming majority of Arab residents of Jerusalem would prefer a continuation of Israeli rule over the United City. That appears from an opinion survey that was carried out by a Palestinian news agency and confirmed also by some surveying that was done by the Israeli Central Bureau of Statistics. On the one hand, you have an overwhelming majority of the Jewish and Arab population of Jerusalem favouring a continuation of Israeli rule. But on the other hand, those supporting Palestinians and Palestinian leaders saying Jerusalem or East Jerusalem must be part of a Palestinian state. So you have, and the security problems in Jerusalem would be immense and insoluble without some kind of agreement. Proceeding to have a situation in which a Palestinian state is recognised without resolving these problems would create potentially a bloodbath that is worse than the situation in Gaza.
Jonathan Turner, Chief Executive of UK Lawyers for Israel. Thank you very much.